All right, guys, and here we are on lucky number 7, part number 7. Now, this part right here is going to entail actually installing the transmission. This is the one I'm the most eager for, but yet I know it's probably going to be the toughest because with limited height, I have to be able to get the transmission up on the transmission jack. And as you can see, she's already under here. She's ready to go under there, but look at that difference I'm gonna have to make. And on top of that, look, she's literally on the ground, ready to go up. I can see that space under here, but other than that, I'm gonna have to figure out how to get this thing up there, and all while not damaging anything. Super excited, but also super scared. Like, this is wonderful, but it sucks. So, this video may take place over a couple of days, unless I get really lucky. And, you know, I might not. So far throughout, I've been pretty lucky, you know, knock on wood. But this right here is going to be installing the transmission, making sure the shifter is set up right, and make sure I don't have to trim any more out of that transmission tunnel. Because if I do, obviously I'm prepared to do that. So that, and also actually is installing the clutch cable on the quadrant and all the way to the transmission. So this video is going to detail quite a bit. It's not going to be as long because I'm going to be doing more hands-on work than talking work. So there is one thing I would like to note on here that I've done that I'm trying, that I've never done before, but I'm using it as maybe a method to hopefully make things easier. If you'll notice on the back transmission, I left the slip yoke in it. And the reason I left that slip yoke in there is because I wanted obviously to seal on the back of the transmission. But also, as I'm installing it, instead of rocking the transmission back and forth like this to get it to line up with the disc, I figured, hey, I could just spin that a little bit to line the disc splines up with the splines in the shaft. Now, that's my theory. Whether it's going to work or not, I don't know. But we're going to try it out. I mean, what do I got to lose? At least it won't be fluid. And then once I get everything installed and put up there, then I'm going to remove that actual slide yoke, install on the drive shaft, put the drive shaft back in, and finish filling the transmission. Right now, the transmission has 2 quarts of fluid in it. It takes a little over 3. Also, if I cut that transmission tunnel right, that extra quart should be pretty easy to add from the shifter. All right, so I've been at it a few hours, and something I realized is, the wiring for the transmission. Absolutely make sure that that's really out of the way. I had everything lined up, worked my butt off for hours just to get that transmission lined up, and to find out it won't come all the way up into the dowels because the wiring actually slid down between the bell housing, the block, and the actual clutch. So, had to break it loose, and now here I am trying to reseat it again. And here's where I'm at so far. So you can see I'm pretty close to it. I've got like all the jacks under here, but I'm pretty close. You can see where the actual flywheel is right there. So we're lining everything back up slowly but surely, but we're getting there. So yeah, just make sure that everything is out of the way before you actually do this, because just getting the transmission onto the jacks from underneath the car like that, that's a job in its own. So hopefully this time nothing's going to stop me from getting this thing lined up. So here we go. All right, so it's been a rough day. Been laying under this car for about 6 hours. Finally got the trans, everything lined up, everything's in, everything's installed, everything after about the 3rd try went smooth. I thought I cracked the bell housing, but in reality it was just a casting flash, a casting line. Like, I was about done, but luckily I noticed that the other bell housing that I have has the same marks on it, so I'm like, okay, cool, it's just casting, so we're good. So, got everything mounted up, got everything bolted up, starter's back on, and now we're getting ready to remove that slip yoke, and we're going to install in the drive shaft, and then throw the drive shaft back in. But I did have to remove the shifter to get the car, or to get the transmission in, because it still hit the floor of the transmission tunnel. So got that taken care of, and I got to throw the shifter back in, but it's all back in, it's all installed. Now I will show you one thing that I did have to do to the transmission mounts that I thought it was a little off, but it looks like it's completely adjustable. And there's actually there's 2 nut certs in there, and they're slidable. There's 3 holes, but there's 2 actual threads. But it's like a little slide, and you can pick which 2 holes you want to use of the 3. So when I put this manual in there, I actually had to move that slide back 1 hole. So I'll show you that right now. And that right there is that slide I was talking about. Let me turn the light on. There we go, that's better. So yeah, you can see that right there. It actually just slides and then moves the 2 threaded holes from the front 2 to the back 2. Did that on both sides. So now, like I said, we'll be removing that and installing the drive shaft. And then you can see how the trimming did work. Didn't have to trim much of anything else at all. So you can see right here where that vent kind of almost touches, but it'll be just fine. So yeah, everything's installed. All looks good. Now to drop that wiring back in there and then run the shifter cable. All right, so now we got the drive shaft back installed in the vehicle. It was kind of a pain in the butt to put in because the new slip yoke on there seemed to be a hair longer. So when I went to actually put it in, I actually had to lift the rear end up on the car because the articulation made the rear end closer to the transmission, so it wouldn't actually line up with the actual drive shaft flange. So I jacked it up about 2 inches, and then the rear end actually moved back, so I was able to actually fit the drive shaft in there again. Now we're topping off the fluid through the top where the shifter would go. And once we do that, we can put the shifter in and start installing everything the rest of the way. As you can see here, adding fluid from this area right here. It takes just a little over 3 quarts. I already had 2 quarts in it. So now we're just adding. Be slow about it, because if not, you will make a mess. Once you add that, all's good. Then you can reinstall your shifter. All right, so now as you can see, the template, everything we used to cut out the floor worked out perfectly. Reinstalled the shifter. I have this gasket here I got from, I don't know, something on eBay, some Mustang gaskets, and great concept, except for it's super flimsy. And as soon as you go to tighten it down, guess what happens? It just pops out the sides. It doesn't seal for anything. So silicone it is. All right, so we got the center console mounted back up, shifter boots installed, and look at that. We're starting to install the actual shifter. Oh, snap. Look at that thing installed. Look at it. How pretty is that? That's awesome. All right, so we ran it through a few gears. We ran it through first and reverse. Just to see if it would move under its own power and see what adjustment needs to be made. And as you can see here, it does move under its own power, and very minimal adjustments need to be made yet. Alright, so it's a little late in the night, but we got everything installed, got it adjusted, put in first gear, reverse, this and that. Everything seems to be working fine. So, and the clutch pedal feels pretty well. So it looks like we are successful in this swap. All I did was just run the clutch, cable the way it was supposed to be run, and plug it in and adjust it out with the adjuster on the firewall. So I think it's going to work. I think it's doing fine. So next is going to be a test drive. So we'll see you guys on the next one, and hopefully it's going to be a nice, successful test drive. So don't forget to like and subscribe, guys.